Guys, I want to get loud all of a sudden.
Do it.
Sorry, I'm going to...
It's you. I knew it was coming.
I'm sorry, guys,
Can't
but I
hold 'em
need
back.
to do that.
It is. You feel like Poseidon chucking that bugger down in the water.
Chucking that bugger. Did you butt out that deer?
I did not butt out that deer, but the next one I get,
Okay.
it's getting its butt out.
Is that little Stevie out here in the back?
Drobop. Bow drop, I'm sorry. Drobop. Hello. Stay tuned. I'll be back after my seizure.
Every little chipmunk that was running around, everything's dead quiet, and I went like that. Just happened.
I saw what is in essence a nature-gasm.
Hey, everybody. Welcome around the Sonic Campfire. It's Uncle Buck.
Hey, I'm Ryan.
This is Dave.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Will.
Dang, guys, it feels like a month and a half since I've been here, and I've just missed 1 week.
A month of Thursdays.
I just said that last week, buddy. You miss 1 week with this group, and you feel like you miss a lifetime.
You fall behind.
I'm telling you.
And Stevie,
Yes, sir.
I know what you're talking about.
What do you mean?
Antibiotics had me, like, thinking kooky, dude.
Oh, you're telling me. That'll do it to you every time.
Antibiotics. Is that Steve Biotics' sister?
Yeah, Steve, yeah.
Antibiotics.
I had a little case of, like, gut rot.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise known as diverticulitis.
So who's our guest?
Poor fella.
Well, enough about my gut.
No, let's talk more about that.
No, we can see that for the current.
Yeah,
He's got a gut feeling we've got some interesting,
Yeah.
hard-hitting turkey talk coming up.
I can't wait.
And speaking of guts, now I have butterflies in my belly
Yeah.
in anticipation for this weekend. And what better way to
Anything to get that flora, chlora.
the bowel flora back in normal?
Yeah, back in
status,
check.
at equilibrium. But to get that back in check,
Bucky, you're killing me.
back to
Who
my
is it?
butterflies.
Who's our guest, bud?
We're heading south of the border, aren't we?
We're going a little south.
South of the PA
South
border.
of the Mason-Dixon line.
How far south of Mason-Dixon line?
Not too far south. We're going straight down to Maryland with Mr. Tracy Groves.
There we
Heartwood
go.
Outdoors.
And we're
Is
gonna
that right?
at Heartwood Outdoors, and we're gonna talk some turkey tonight.
Nice.
Hi, Tracy.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful.
It's good to have you back.
Standing on the top of the mountain, just waiting for a bird to gobble.
Oh, I hope we get a little bit of that in the background. That'd be awesome.
That would be
Yeah, you might. You never know.
podcast gold, Ryan. Especially
So
talking to
what's new with you, man?
Oh, just hard into the turkey hunting right now, and there at the Harvard Outdoors camp, we're getting ready to finish up fertilizing food plots, but we're hard into the turkey hunting now. It's time. So
Yeah.
that's what's going on here.
There's been a little success down there recently, hasn't there? If I remember
There
seeing those photos right.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah, there has. I was fortunate enough to harvest a bird last Saturday with my son-in-law Dale. He was actually supposed to be the one shooting, but
You grabbed that
Well,
gun
he
out of
had
his hand quick enough?
well, no, my gun was actually laying on my lap, and he was the one supposed to be shooting, but he learned a very valuable lesson that day, that you don't put a 4-inch sapling where you can't swing your gun, and you never know which way the birds are going to come in. So the bird was working right to him, but he tucked down under a little knuckle, and next thing you know, he laid his gun back down. He thought the bird was gone, and next thing I know, I said, there he is, but he come up over his left side, and there was a 4-inch sapling in the way, and he couldn't swing his gun. So it broke my heart, but unfortunately, I was forced to be the one to pull the trigger.
Oh, bless your heart.
Sounds like you're pretty torn up about it.
Thanks for taking that bullet for the boy.
Somebody has to do it, so I figured it might as well be me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he said it was my turn anyway, because he was the last one to shoot the last time we were together, so he said it was my turn.
Well, that's what you say after you don't shoot one.
Right.
Yeah, that
Exactly.
makes sense.
Well, congratulations. That was a beautiful bird.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Birds have been tough. It's been a tough season so far, but when is turkey hunting not tough?
Right.
Yeah. When did the season open in Maryland, Tracy?
April 18th.
Okay.
Yeah, April 18th.
I was still shoveling snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were hunting the first week of the season. We were hunting in 24 to 26 degree temperatures in the central part of Maryland. I have never had to wear my deer hunting attire to go turkey hunting before.
Wow.
Did they even make Obsession in that heavy of material?
No, I was bundled up in bottomland.
Yeah.
You know, you work with the season. So you start out with bottomland when there's no leaves, and then you move into Obsession when the green comes on.
I'll tell you, up here we won't need Obsession for quite a few more weeks.
Yeah, the way it's going, you may not need it till June.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
You said earlier before we started that you didn't really have to call much for this guy.
Well, we didn't hear anything on this particular bird. We didn't hear anything gobble on the roost that was close. Everything that gobbled on the roost was probably 800 to 900 yards away. But I had seen birds in this area the day before. I actually heard him gobble the day before, but he was with 7 hens. There was 2 longbeards with 7 hens, and I called to him, and he gobbled back at me, but he wasn't really going to break off of those hens to come, so I just left him alone. I didn't work him, and I waited till the next day and went back in there the next day, and the next day he was only with 4 instead of 7, and there was actually 3 longbeards. So Then you got a chance to pull one off, you know. But key to turkey hunting, if he don't want to die that day, don't hunt him. Wait till he wants to die.
Right.
You know, so whenever I seen he was with those hens or that many hens, instead of sitting there and calling and just educating him, I just chose to let him go. And the next day, but he gobbled one time. I called to him with the mouth call. And he responded. He was probably 120 yards away, and then from there, the hens actually came to 60, and the 3 longbeards followed those hens, and I started purring on a slate call, and one of them broke off, and I guess he thought I was sexy enough to come check me out.
Nice.
It makes sense.
So, Tracy, could you walk us through a little bit of give us a picture for the area, what the terrain is like, what your surroundings are like, for those people that may not understand turkey hunting that are listening? What,
like, anybody in particular?
No one in
Not
particular
at this table.
No. Of course, no one at this table.
But that particular area, every situation is different. Every area is different. I've been scouting birds now since March the 9th is when I started this year. But that particular area was a lot of fields. When the turkeys really start getting into strutting and really get into breeding, they like to go to those fields to display themselves and kind of show off a little bit. So that particular area was a field with little ridges. And the field actually sets below the ridge, so setting up on the field edge won't necessarily work all the time because it's very difficult to call a bird downhill. So I got up on the ridge. I was 72 yards off of the field edge, but I was above him, and that was what kind of allowed him to come in. So that particular area for central Maryland was what we would call fairly flat. It wasn't your really big mountains, but it had some, small ridges in it on that particular hunt.
So you said you were doing some scouting there in early March. What in particular are you looking for? Because that was, 6 weeks ago. Prior to the season opening. What in particular are you looking for at that time?
Listening for birds to gobble. Get up early in the morning and go out and just listen for birds to start to gobble, and then just glassing fields.
So you're just listening.
That's it. I don't touch a call. That's the number one mistake that a lot of guys will make before turkey season comes in. They'll go out and they'll start blowing an owl call or a crow call, or some guys will actually use their turkey call, and that's the worst thing you can do. When I get up, I go out, I listen, let them do their thing on as natural as possible. And then once I locate where they're roosting, then I move on to the next place. Now, I do hit a crow call later in the morning once I know they're on the ground, but it's only once or twice and I'm done. Because those birds, if you pull down off the edge of the road or a field or whatever, and you start out hooting and they gobble, and then you get in your truck and car or whatever, slam the door, and then going down the road, you just educated that bird. So there's going to become a time where he won't respond to that owl call. So just go out and listen. And the birds move. So you got to stay on them when they start to go from their fall family or winter family groups, and they start breaking up and going into their bachelor groups, and when they start busting up and creating a dominancy and pecking order and that sort of thing, those birds will start to move into what I call their final roost area, which means that's where they're going to roost while they're doing their breeding.
How long does that typically last?
8 to 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
each breeding cycle in the turkeys lasts, generally between 10 to 15 days between each breeding cycle. So once they what they call transition 1, transition 2, and transition 3 in the breeding cycles. And once they get into start that transition, it's generally 10 to 15 days in between each transition.
There's a lot of science behind this stuff.
Oh, you don't even. So can we just kind of go back and touch on the breeding cycle and where are we at right now, roughly?
Well,
And wait, I want to.
Whoa!
What starts it off? Is it temperature? Is it temperature change warming up, or is it sunlight? The time of day?
Photosynthesis.
What tells a turkey? Okay, it's time to start breeding.
third full moon.
Well, there's every person you talk to will probably give you a different answer on that. There's a lot of different theories. There's some people do believe it's the time, the light in the turkey's eye, just like a deer. And me personally, I believe it's the temperatures and the high pressure days. Last year, for the last 2 years, we've had a very warm spring. By this time last year, 80% of the birds have already been bred. What I'm seeing right now, this year, the birds are just now getting ready to start breeding. There are some that are breeding, but not very many. So I personally believe it's the weather, the temperatures is what really kind of kicks them in to get them going. I think that the time, the daylight hours plays a small part, but I really believe that the warmer temperatures really helps it out.
So
that's
Trace,
what I think.
I know a couple years ago we went out to Kentucky, and
yes.
Would you say that we were a hair early for them for that time and those birds? I mean, and it's just like it can be dead, during that time if you're not hitting it right.
So every area. So in Maryland, you have the Eastern Shore, you have the Central, and then you have the Western. All those birds will be in different phases of the breeding transition, all at different times, although it's all in the same state. So every place that you go to this year, I know have guys that have canceled their trips to places like Oklahoma and Kansas because the breeding cycles are way later. So just last week, my buddy was in Oklahoma, and they did very well because the breeding cycles have started to change. So every area is different. So to answer your question earlier of where we are right now, unfortunately, I think we're in maybe some of the hardest stuff. I mean, I'm going into areas right now where I know there's 7 or 8 different gobblers and not hearing one peep in the morning, not hearing one gobble at all. That means that they have established their pecking order. That means that they have gathered up the hens that they're going to breed, and that means that they're roosting with those hens, so there's no need for them to gobble. They don't have to gobble because the hens are right there with them.
Gotcha. Jeez.
Is somebody writing this down?
Well, we're recording it.
Oh,
Good
point.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Hopefully we are.
It's, there's different you can really, when it comes to turkey hunt, number one, there's no rules to turkey. The rule number one is there's no rules. And turkeys, you can get really in depth with it and really try to figure the animals out, or you can just go hunt them and have fun and try not to figure it out, because it will drive you crazy.
So, Tracy, you said that
I'm in the latter camp.
Yeah.
The crazy.
It will drive you crazy.
Yeah,
Here's what I can tell you, though. If you can learn how to hunt the transitions, you will harvest more turkeys, and you'll learn how to call to them in different transitions. So when they're establishing pecking order, if you're in that transition, when they're establishing pecking order, if you use a gobble hose, then you're going to pull a bird off, because now you're a threat to him. So if you know the transitions and you can learn how to call to them during those transitions, you can be much more successful in your hunt.
So is transition the first transition when the temperature reaches that sweet spot and things start happening? Or is that, I guess I'm trying to understand or trying to pinpoint what's going on in each one of these three transitions.
Okay. So transition one is when the birds are establishing their pecking order. They've gone from their winter, family groups. So in the winter, they're all together. Mm-hmm. And the transition one is when those birds start to break up. The jakes go together. The 2-year-olds go together. The monarch birds will break off and go together, and they start to establish their pecking order of who is the boss, who's the man, who's the kind of like you were in high school, who is the man? There was always the man. So,
Catfish.
So establish first. So the first transition is establishing the pecking order, and basically what he does is that boss gobbler will gather up the harem of hens that he will breed. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 10, depending on how big the flock is. That's transition 1. Great time to harvest a bird. Transition 2 is when most hunters know the term henned up. That's when the gobblers have already gathered their harem. These are the hens that I'm going to breed, and now he roosts right with them. He roosts with them. In transition 1, the gobblers will not roost with the hens. They roost together. All the gobblers will roost together. Well, the 2-year-olds will roost together, and the monarch birds, which is your big birds, they'll roost together, and then the jakes will roost together. In transition 3, that's when the hens have already been bred. They've gone to nest now, and now your big birds are out searching for the leftovers to pick up.
Looking for the scraps.
Yeah. Looking for the scraps. And that's when you can take a board and bang it up against a tree and get a bird to gobble and kill him.
Those are the days I like to go.
Yeah, that's right. That's the days everybody looks for.
And you think to go back, you figure you're in transition 1 right now?
No. We're in central Maryland. We're in transition 2. The birds are henned up. They've established who their harem is, and they're going to they're roosting with them, and they're henned up.
So you mentioned
hardest time of the year to hunt.
So when you killed your bird, you had mentioned this past weekend, you were able to pull one of those hens off of the gobbler, and he started following her to you.
No, I pulled the gobbler off the hen.
You pulled the gobbler off the hen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so basically what it was is there was 3 longbeards. You had one bird was the boss, He was the dominant bird. And then, so let's just say, to make it a little bit more understandable, there was a 3-year-old bird or 4-year-old bird and probably 2-year-old birds. And then you had the hens. So the monarch bird, the 3-year-old bird or 4-year-old bird, he's not going to leave them hens at all. He's right there with them.
Okay.
But so those other 2 longbeards know that that's his harem. That's the girls that he's going to breed with. So what you can do is you can actually get one of those 2-year-old birds to break away from them to come check you out. And so you just, so I seen that as soon as I seen that there was the monarch bird, the older bird, he was off to himself. He was by himself, and then the other 2, they were together. So that told me that he was the boss, and that now I got 2 2-year-olds. And
Gotcha.
if I do this right, I should be able to pull off one of those 2-year-olds, and that's what I did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If I wouldn't have been able to see them, if I wouldn't have been able to see those 3 birds there, then I wouldn't have been able to adjust. So I changed my style of calling once I seen what I seen.
Gotcha.
So if I couldn't see that, I'm not going to say we wouldn't have killed him, but by seeing what I seen, it told me what the situation was and allowed me to change my style of calling.
Did you have a decoy set out at that point?
No.
You said you basically just changed up your calling to just soften it up a little bit. You started purring.
That's correct.
Yeah, and basically what that's doing is, and I guess to draw the equations here, instead of pulling in the senior jock who's dating all the cheerleaders, what you grabbed was one of these stupid freshmen who thought he's going to sneak over and steal one of the jock's girlfriends when he's not looking.
Exactly right.
So
that's exactly right.
Gotcha. I'm very familiar with that technique.
I put it in terms Stevie would understand there.
I hate to put it this way, but turkey hunting, if you can relate it a lot like high school,
Yeah.
Yep.
and what went on with boys and girls in high school, you'll figure turkeys out.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's really, to be honest with you, it's really kind of the same thing.
And
Well, to some degree.
along those lines, one of the theories, I guess, that I've tried to use in the past, when I got into that situation where when I got into that situation where I thought these birds were henned up, but I heard one gobbling off the rooster, I heard one answering to some of my calls, but just what didn't seem interested, I would actually keep that gobble shaker, in my vest.
Yeah.
And the theory there is, I could sound as sexy as I look in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh,
when
gotcha.
I'm purring and I'm
Man.
hitting all those calls nice and soft and
Dang.
sweet.
That's what I'm talking
But
about.
if this dude's in his bedroom with 7 or 8 girls already, he's not going to come out to see the girl in the kitchen.
That's right.
Right.
What if
But
he smells something?
but instead of just being
French
that girl
toast
in
or
the
something?
kitchen, no, you guys are missing the.
But if you think
analogy
catfish
here.
is busting down the door,
No, here's what happens. Instead of, that dude's in the bedroom with 6 of his girlfriends, and he hears some girl in the kitchen going, hey, I'm over here. He's like, yeah, I'll get you later. But if he's in his living room or his bedroom, and he hears this little girl in the kitchen, he's like, I'll talk to her later. And then all of a sudden he hears some other dude go, don't worry about it, bud, I got her.
Uh-oh.
Now he's like, hold on a second. Now, is that true? I'm trying to base that in.
Yes, it is. He's not going to leave what he can see to go check out what he can't see.
But you could
Right.
potentially pull him off by making him angry.
Well, sometimes, yeah. You can. Yeah. So it's kind of, a hen, if you get too aggressive with a hen and that's her main boyfriend, she'll take him the other way. So if you get too aggressive with your calling, she will lead him away from you. But if you soft call where you're not a threat to her, then she's like, hey, she's okay. I'll just stay right here.
So wait, so there's competition between the gobblers, and now we're talking about competition between the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Absolutely. like I said, high school days.
Oh man,
There's always competition.
Yeah.
And you say that the softer hen gets the gobble.
Yeah, there's in transition 3, you can get aggressive. That's you can cut and yelp and really carry on, and that bird, if every time you call he cuts you off, lay into him, let him come in and shoot him in the face. But blow his lips off. But most of the time, the aggressive calling does not work. Now, a lot of people will argue at that point, but how often have you sat in the woods and really heard a hen really go crazy? It does happen on occasion, but for the most part, it does not.
When I've heard that, I always think it's another dude.
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen. There are times that it does happen, but I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, you will kill more birds by being patient and soft call than you are by hammering her to the road.
Yeah, I think about 3 years ago, I almost got in a fight with a hen.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly believed for about the first 45 minutes I was having a calling contest with a guy on the other side of the hollow.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call, and he would just mimic me. And then I'd call again, he would mimic me. And I was like, well, let's just see how far he'll take this. And I got real aggressive with it. I mean, like the fighting purrs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And every time I call, this guy would just repeat it. But then he started getting closer. Then I actually started getting nervous. I'm like, dude's like stalking me. I don't want to get shot here.
Yeah.
But I'd call softer then, and then he'd call softer. Anyway, to cut to the chase here.
I'm on the edge of my
It was a
seat.
hen. It was an actual hen, and she came into the calls, and she was ready
bearded
for a
hen?
fight.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a bearded hen. But yeah, she was all kinds of worked up. She was mad.
No kidding.
And once I saw it was a turkey, then I went back to being more aggressive. And man, she was pissed till she got in.
So that leads me to a question. What is it whenever we see these hens by themselves? Like in the field, like, in Kentucky, we had that lone hen come in, or, and I've had that a couple times where it's just all you see is a hen.
Yeah. It's really.
Why are they lonely?
To be honest with you, I wish I could answer that question, because I would do a lot less talking to myself if I could answer that question. I mean, on junior day, as I was out scouting and watching and listening and everything, I was talking to myself like I had a passenger beside of me, because I was seeing single hens at 7 o'clock in the morning out strolling across fields, crossing the road by themselves at 7 o'clock in the morning. That should not be. What are they doing? They should have either been with a buddy, their girlfriend. They should have been in a group of 3 or 4. They should have had, by that time, their gobblers should have been at least following them, but they weren't. They were completely by themselves. And then you drive 8 miles down the road, and you see a field where there's 3 longbeards and 15 hens. It's just, this year has been, from farm to farm, they've been completely different.
I'm telling you, we'll take it back to high school days. Those are those weird band chicks that don't get hot till after graduation.
I say no more.
The late bloomers, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm telling you, it's that's what makes turkey hunting so fun and so difficult, and just it's what makes it. I mean, it makes you talk to yourself, and that's what makes it so rewarding when it does happen. And you never know when that day is that it's going to happen. So I went to a farm this morning where a guy told me that it's full of birds. There's full of birds, not one bird gobbled. And this morning was a high-pressure day, beautiful morning, right, 53 degrees. Everything was perfect, and not one bird gobbled. You could go in there tomorrow, and birds would just sound off everywhere. So the transitions change from day to day. So you don't never know when the right day is going to be the right day, and that's why you have to spend as much time in the turkey woods as you can. It's very challenging, but it's so very rewarding when it all comes together.
So I was going to say the last time we were out, to add on to this, you and we were in a ground blind cutting up more than we called, and that one hen just comes out of nowhere, kicks over my Avian X hen, and walks away.
Yeah,
flogged it and left.
Really?
Knocked it over. I'm like, now what, Trace? Now what?
So
yeah, right.
Turkey hunting has a lot of uncontrollable variables. But there's one thing you definitely can control in being prepared to head out to the woods, and that's your shotgun. Anything preseason, patterning, making sure your choke tubes are correct, anything like that you could give our listeners, or actually us around this table, information on?
Man, you got the patterning wizard on the phone here.
Yeah, I want to say.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time. About 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I seen a gentleman who shot a choke tube out of a Browning, and I would have bet money that it was a target that was shot 2 or 3 times, and then he showed it to me. And I actually told the guy he was crazy. I said, "You're crazy. That's not out of a choke tube. It might be, but you shot at it twice." He said, "No, I didn't." So I actually asked him if he'd come to my house and prove it to me, and he did. And I went on a major endeavor to shoot every choke tube on the market and pattern as many guns as possible with every ammunition that was made in the turkey woods. Because at that time, this is going back probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, at that time, the technology, in order for you to harvest a bird, it had to be at 35 yards or 40 yards. 40 yards was a long shot.
Okay.
And so I went on an endeavor to try to, and so I probably shot over 15, 20 different choke tubes out of 6 or 7 different guns with every different ammunition. I think I went through almost 20 different types of ammunition. And so I've done a lot of patterning, a lot of testing, on 20 gauges, 12 gauges, everything that's out there. And basically, what I've come down to is the choke tube that I recommend that I shoot right now is an Indian Creek with a Winchester Longbeard No. 6 shell. And no matter what gun I pick up, if I put that combination together, Indian Creek with No. 6 Winchester Longbeard, the gun will perform. And I don't recommend this, but I would not hesitate to shoot at a turkey at 65 yards plus.
Wow.
No, I'm not recommending that.
Right.
I don't suggest that. But if I'm in a situation, which I was 2 years ago, where I have a world record turkey at 56 yards, am I going to shoot him? I would not take that shot in the woods. I did take that shot in the field, but knowing your gun, knowing the pattern, knowing what it'll do is phenomenal. So the best thing you can do is whatever choke tube you get. Now, there's a lot of good ones out there. This new Jebs that's out there is very good. Kicks is very good. Pattern Masters are very good. They're good choke tubes, but whichever one you get, you've got to take the time to pattern it with different shells, because you will find a mix match where this particular shell will shoot the best with that choke tube. You've got to take the time to do it. And, a lot of people think right now that 50 or 60 BBs in the head and neck at 35 yards is good. And it is if you don't know any better. But would you rather shoot 140 in the head and neck?
Now, when you're saying different shells, are you looking at size? So 2 3/4, 3 inch, 3 1/2, and then also are you looking at different size BBs, or are you kind of sticking with 6s and going from different brand and trying different material or different wad configurations?
of all the back 8 to 10 years ago, I would shoot 3-inch, 2 3/4, 3-inch, and 3.5 in shot size of 4, 5, and 6s with a 2-ounce and 2 1/4 ounce loads. I would mix match and I would shoot all of them.
Okay.
After all of that testing that I did, I have found, and this is for me and the guns that I shoot an old Mossberg 835, the ones that, are ancient, that were very heavy, and I shoot a Browning BPS. That's the 2 guns that I shoot.
Okay.
But of all the guns that I've shot, Berettas, Benellis, the Extreme 2, the new Stoger, of all the guns I've shot and of all the ammunition I've shot, every choke tube that I've shot with the shell has always gone back to up until this year, because I know there's some new stuff out this year that I'm not finished completely testing, but everything I've done has always went back to a number 6.
Okay. And have you
That's
seen?
For me.
There's some talk of velocity downrange too, with depending on your shot size. Are you also kind of looking at through the years of what actually just killed better? A quicker, cleaner kill. I know your pattern means a lot, but also the downrange. I guess it'd be.
Yeah. The way that we tested that. The way that we tested that was we took. And I know these aren't around anymore, but we took telephone books.
Okay.
And we would set up a telephone book, and we would shoot it at 20 yards, 30 yards, and 40 yards, and we would actually go back and check to see what page number was the last BB broke through.
Okay.
And even at that point, now this was 2 to 3 years ago, a number 5 penetrated about 5 pages further than a number 6. But 5 pages
doesn't seem like much for telephone books.
It's not much, and the amount of BBs, I was getting probably 30% more BBs in the head and neck than I was with a number 5. Oh, wow. So I stay with number 6s.
Okay. Yeah.
How do you argue with that? I mean, it sounds like you tested every possible combination.
The man has definitely run the numbers.
Yeah, he's run the numbers.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of guys out there that, if you watch there was just a hunt that was aired on the Mossy Oak Country Obsession or Mossy Oak Country, where Cuz shot a turkey with these new number 7s. What is it? The TCC or SCC or something like that.
Something like that.
TSS, I believe is what it is. Number 7s. I mean, it shot the bird. It did a phenomenal job. I can't argue with that.
And that's not a lead configuration. That's some type of high-grade metal, I think.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And you can't argue with that. The thing is that what you're not seeing there, or in my situation, is, I've had situations where I have a bird at, 55, 56 yards, and man, there was many a birds that I let walk years ago at that distance, and that's a good poke. I don't care what anybody says. That's a good shot. I would not take that shot in the woods. A lot of people do. I would not, and I know what my gun will do. But with turkey hunting, you might hunt 31. If there's 40 days in a season, you hunt 31 of them, and you have one shot opportunity at a bird at 55 yards. Do you want a gun and a choke tube and a shell that'll do the job?
I'd say yes.
Right? And that's the reason I put so much time into pattern guns and all, because turkey hunting is so challenging that in a 45-day season or a 46-day season, if you get one opportunity, I want to be able to take that opportunity. Because there's many, many, many years before I learned about breeding transitions, and I really tried to focus on becoming a good turkey hunter. I would hunt an entire season for one opportunity, and if that opportunity was at 53 yards back in the day, I would not take it, but now I will.
Yeah, and that's definitely, like I was saying earlier, that's one thing you can control in a very tough bird to harvest with a lot of uncontrollables with weather and, when you get out within a season. So awesome. Thank you for all those tips. It's a lot of information, but good information.
I'm scraping here to get into a subject matter that is, I've discovered is near and dear to my heart now. We've already talked about calls and guns, tubes, and ammunition, but let's talk about decoys. When do I use them? What configuration do I need to use them? And does it matter which transition we're in? What I'm using? Talk to me, Trace.
Well, all those questions would take about 4 more podcasts. But just to give you a rough, this is just me personally, okay? And I know that there's a lot of people out there that may not agree with this, but when I'm in the woods, when I'm hunting woods, I do not use decoys. And the reason that is because I want the birds to come look for me. If they hang up, now there's 2 arguments to that, and that is, well, if they don't see a decoy, then they're not going to come. And then the other argument is, well, they may not see a decoy, so it's going to make them come. If I'm hunting in the woods, I do not use decoys, no matter what the breeding transitions are. If I'm on a logging road, that's different. If I'm hunting field edges, 99% of the time I will have decoys out. The combination that I use all the time, because you can never go wrong with it, is I use Avian X. I use the looker decoy, but I do not stand it up. I set it down. I lay it on the ground, like as if she's sitting on her belly. This is just my personal opinion. I think Avian X decoys are probably some of the best out there, but I don't like the looker, because the looker to me looks like it's what happens when there's a pair of geese, right? You've always got one looking out for danger. So to me, the looker decoy makes a turkey, a gobbler, feel a little bit, hey, what is she looking at? Why is she not relaxed? Why is she not comfortable? So I use a looker decoy, and I lay her on her belly. I take the sticks out, and I put a jake. I use a jake decoy directly behind her, about 3 foot away. It's not a strutting jake. It's just a regular jake decoy. That is the combination that I use probably 95% of the time that I'm in a field. Or I'll use a feeder, I'll use the looker, and then I'll use a jake that is not a strutter. I've had a lot of situations where I used to use a strut decoy, and you can intimidate a bird. If you have a 2-year-old come out into a field and he sees that strutter, it may intimidate him, so he'll turn around and go back in. He won't be intimidated by a jake. So a jake decoy never intimidates anything. So you should always be able to use a jake and have success with it. If you use a strutter, which a lot of people like to do, the strutter can, if it's a big monarch bird, then of course he'll come. If it's a 2-year-old, you could scare him away. And if it's a jake, he probably is not going to come either, because he's a threat that you're going to kick his butt. That's my personal opinion. There's a lot of different, opinions out there about decoys. I've had great success with them, but I've also had a lot of times where I was like, well, that didn't work out so well. There's been many a time where I've got out of the blind, pulled the decoys down, and then harvested a bird.
Do you put any thought into the direction that you're facing these? And I don't know if it's something I read or if it's a theory that I made up myself and convinced myself it's fact.
That's probably it.
That's probably it.
Bingo.
But I actually, you were talking about the Avian X lookout, and I have that one, and it's funny that you say you don't use the stakes and you lay it on the ground. I should start doing that because mine keeps falling over.
Or a hen comes over and kicks it off.
But I actually will set that up, and I will have it facing me.
Like looking at you.
Looking at me. And if I use a jake, which I haven't, pulled the trigger on and bought a really good Avian X jake decoy, but if I do try to throw a jake out, one of my other decoys, I will set that up facing away from me.
I don't I don't really, personally, I don't worry about which way the hen's facing, but I do care about which way the Jake is facing. The Jake has to be facing the hen.
Yes. Okay.
On the, like, it's, you know, it's three-quarter. On the hind end, right.
Yeah,
all right. Come on now. When you walk down the halls of high school, what'd you do?
Yeah, Phil, what'd you do?
He was dancing.
I was saying,
I'm a butt man, so I already know.
I'll leave that alone. I'll just leave it there for you to think about. But the Jake needs to be on the back side of the hen on a rear end, checking out the rear end,
like a buck.
Right.
Right. Which in that
Uncle
case, that would have the hen. Oh boy, here we go.
Hey, let me tell you this about decoys. I have had many situations where I've had a single hen decoy in a field, and other hens and gobblers, 2-year-old birds, have skirted me 45, 50, 60 yards around. I go out and remove that single decoy, and they come right to me.
Huh.
So I very, very, very seldom do I ever use a single hen anymore. And if I do, it's the looker without the sticks, and she's tucked on her belly. She's just sitting like she's sitting in a dusting bowl.
Yeah.
Bucky, you just got some decoys, didn't you?
Yeah, I have a confession. I have a new addiction. It's Avian X turkey decoys. I bought 3 in the last week, Trace. I have a lay-down hen, a breeder hen, and a quarter strut Jake.
Yep.
And
the quarter strut Jake is great. All those decoys are you couldn't have went wrong there. Avian X makes a great decoy. They do a phenomenal job with what they do. They're affordable, and if you shoot them, it won't hurt them.
It's true.
You know, so you didn't go wrong there at all.
And they look pretty. I mean,
did you take a shower with him yet?
You asking me?
Friday night we're doing that.
Yeah, you're crossing the line when you start taking a shower with people.
Well, no, if you read the instructions, Tracy, you're supposed to.
You're supposed to put him in the shower.
That's right. Can't help it. I got in with them.
Oh, I thought I was supposed to
You show me where it says that in the instructions.
Yeah, you're supposed to put them in hot water to make them a little more adorable.
Shower with them.
I thought it was like a rubber ducky, but for big guys.
Oh boy,
a rubber clucky.
Yeah.
Oh my.
But Trace, I do. They're pretty decoys.
Yeah, they are.
And I hope the Toms like them as much as I do. The Phils.
The first year I bought one of those Avian X's, I killed the best Tom that I've had. It was a little over 20 pounds, I want to say inch and a quarter, but probably wasn't quite inch and a quarter. Spurs and a 10+ inch beard. Beautiful, beautiful Tom. And you know where that decoy was? Laying in a bag right beside me when I squeezed the trigger.
No kidding.
Really?
Yeah, I ran into that bird on the way back to the truck.
Good luck,
Tracy. Let's say, given those 3 decoys that I have, I happen to be hunting a logging road in the woods. How would you use your decoys in that situation?
I would use them on the logging road, but I would not use them in the woods.
And just set them up with just like we talked about 2 minutes ago.
I would put, if it was me, I would set the 2 hens probably 2 to 3 foot apart, not in front of each other, kind of side by side or, angled a little bit. And then I put the 3/4 strutter about 3 to 4 foot behind them.
Gotcha. Should I put it primarily behind the laydown?
No, if you have 3 of them like that, I would put 2 of them, the 2 hens about 3 to 4 foot apart, and I'd put the Jake behind them, in between them.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So like he's checking out both of them at the same time.
All righty.
Smart Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever glass fields and you watch, you'll always see that the gobblers never. Well, I shouldn't say never because you never know. But when I'm observing, gobblers always behind them. You always have 2 to 3 hens out front, and he's always behind them. He's always following them. So if you go and throw a gobble, and I'm talking about during the breeding cycles, because when they're all pinned up or gathered up in the fall and in the winter, then they just kind of do whatever families do. But during the breeding in the spring, you'll never see a longbeard out in the front. He's always behind them. He's always following up the back. So if you put a decoy out there in front, that's not going to work. They're not stupid.
So if you're putting the decoys on the logging road, or if you're out at the edge of an open field, how far back off the logging road or the edge of the field are you setting up?
20 yards.
20 yards.
Yeah, and the reason why is because, a turkey, if he's not comfortable with that decoy, he'll hang up at 50 yards. Well, if you're 40 yards behind him, now that bird's at 80 yards. So if I put my decoys at 15 to 20 yards and he hangs up at 30 yards on the other side of him, he's still shootable.
I think I feel like I'm always staying within like 10 to 15 yards always, because I feel like that's going to be my problem. He's going to hang up at 40, and now he's going to be that's 50 to me.
Yeah, no more than 20 yards.
So you got to pattern your gun, bud, so you can reach out to 50.
That's right.
Or I got to put my decoys
I had a situation 2 years ago where I had the hen in that Jake that I was telling you about in a longbeard crossed the field 100 yards up from me. I was with my son-in-law again, and we were sitting there, and that longbeard ran across that field. When he got to the other side of the field, he stopped. He went up in the woods about 10 yards, and he stopped, and he just stood there, and he turned around, and he came back down within 3 yards of the edge of the field. That turkey, that longbeard, now he's a good one. He was a good one. I ain't going to tell you how big, but I'm going to tell you he was a good one. He stood in one spot for 45 minutes and never moved, and he watched them decoys. And all we did was soft call and purr to him, and after 45 minutes, he never moved. He stood in one spot for 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, he started to sidestep, and he came 100 yards down that field, sidestepping to them decoys. And so he stood there and watched. So that told me that bird had been hunted before, and he had been spooked before. He would not gobble. But we ended up killing him. But just the thought on that is 45 minutes he stood and looked. How long do you sit before you move when you hear a bird gobble?
4 to 5 minutes.
4 to 5 minutes. Yeah.
I sat the other day, that bird I killed last Saturday, we sat down at 5:30. I shot that bird at 20 minutes to 8, and I never moved. Most turkey hunters would have already moved 4 or 5 times. Right?
Wow.
When you get into the woods where you know there's birds, just settle in, be patient, and wait. Now, if you got a bird gobbling his head off and he's saying, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, then go shoot him. But when they're not being real active and they're not being very vocal and they're making you talk to yourself, the best thing you can do is just sit there. And when you're ready to get up, sit for another half hour. Watch what happens.
Wow.
This is kind of fun. We could do this till about 3 a.m.
So, Tracy, you just had a youth event down at Heartwood Outdoors, didn't you?
We did.
How'd that go?
Very tough.
Yeah.
It was we've been doing that event now. This is our 6th year. And this year was probably the toughest that we've had because of the way the birds were acting. We bring in 3 kids, 3 boys each year with their dads. We start on Wednesday. They come in and they sit around a bonfire, get to know each other. Thursday, they build Cody calls, make some kits that are phenomenal. They build their own calls. They teach them how to pattern their guns. We do decoy demos with them. On Friday, they learn how to use the call that they built the day before. We take them on a fishing trip. And then on Saturday, we take them hunting. And this year, out of 3 boys, we had one that harvested a bird, really good bird.
Mm-hmm.
And all the credit for that one goes to Greg Krebs. He did a phenomenal job scouting.
I saw Greg.
And watching them birds.
Nice.
And then the other boy had a bird hang up on him. He heard all kind of birds gobble. He had a bird hang up on him at 51 yards. And unfortunately, my guy, he didn't hear a bird or see a bird all day.
Oh.
And that boy, I'm going to tell you what, he hunted from 5:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, and it was 94 degrees in our blind.
Ooh.
Yeah, 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened. I watched them birds. I patterned them and watched them for 8 days in a row. And the morning that we went in to hunt them, they weren't there. I don't know if a coyote, got to them the night before. I don't know if somebody happened to walk through the property and scouting and messed them all up. I have no idea what happened, but they weren't there. I felt so bad for the guy, but we've had it was still a good day. I mean, anytime you're turkey is good, but so we only harvested 1 out of 3 this year, and it was a tough hunt. It was 31 degrees on Monday, 33 degrees on Tuesday, 36 degrees on Wednesday, and on Saturday it was 85.
Jeez. And then it snowed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it snowed on Sunday. Snow, sleet, and rain on Sunday. There'll make a turkey go crazy. And me too.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'll make Uncle Buck go crazy too.
Yeah. So it was challenging. The kids had a ball. They had a ball, but
I'm sure, yeah.
And they don't understand. I don't think they understand how difficult. We've been very fortunate in the past. We've had 18 kids come through that program. Out of 18 kids, 14 have harvested birds. 2 of the 4 that did not harvest both missed. And only 2 kids out of 18 really never had an opportunity. They seen plenty of birds, but didn't have an opportunity to pull the trigger. So we've been very fortunate, very blessed. We put a ton of time and work into scouting for that. But I don't think that the kids understand how difficult it is to harvest a turkey. And, to be that successful and to get them as close as they did was huge. I mean, I know guys will hunt an entire season and never even have an opportunity.
Yeah.
So they don't, they're too young to really understand how difficult it is. But we do our best to get those kids on birds. And it's a great time for the fathers and sons to spend time together. And really, that's what it's all about. That particular event is to really get the sons and the dads to reconnect, spend some time together in the outdoors, and spend some time fishing and sitting around a bonfire and telling stories and building a relationship there. Turkey hunting is just a little extra blessing that we get to be a part of.
That's amazing. That I'm sure those 14 out of 18 is pretty good odds. So I'm sure those kids had a great time. How does, if a father son are interested in being a part of that hunt, how do they go about making that happen?
What they do is the families contact us and tell us about the situation, or how they either want to honor their child, or maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect between the father and son, or it could be a special need. There's all kind of circumstances that we work with, and basically the family calls us, tells us about their situation, and we try to accommodate on the hunt for turkey. We bring in 3 kids each year for that particular event, and they some of them will go through a church program, and the church picks them. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we pick them. And just throughout the year, we meet people that we just kind of feel in our heart that these are the kids that need to come.
Yeah,
those are the ones.
And it just, I don't know. Every year it seems to work out, and the right people end up coming.
So this is more. This isn't a father son that hasn't had an opportunity to kill a turkey. That's part of it. This is more of a family reconnecting event.
A little bit of both. I mean, it's all. For I'm gonna say 95% of the time, it's not about killing a turkey, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
Every situation is different, and I wouldn't feel comfortable getting into all their situations. But I can tell you this: we had a young man here 3 years ago that was here, and his dad and that particular family got so involved in the turkey hunting now that all three of them, both boys and the dad, have already harvested a turkey in West Virginia, and they learned everything. They learned everything when they were here for that camp.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We do our very best to, it's so much more than the turkey camp. Even with our deer hunts and our fishing derbies and everything we do here at Heartwood Outdoors, we really try to stay connected with the families and continue to be a part of their families. We had a family here last year that the boy missed a bird on the junior day, and we brought him back the following weekend. It was his birthday, and we brought him back, and they brought a cake, and he ended up harvesting a bird on his birthday. Come on, man! Cool. I'm glad he didn't shoot one today. Yeah. I'm glad he didn't shoot one the week before. And so we try to stay connected with those families and just try to stay apart and help out where we can to mentor the next generation of young men.
You're just not giving turkeys out. You're teaching people to hunt the turkey, instead of.
That's what we try to do.
Giving the man a fish, you're teaching him to fish.
Yeah.
But
and every situation's different. The kids this year, they were 8 years old. They were a little younger, so they didn't care about no decoy. They wanted to go fishing.
Yeah.
And we built a floating pier here at the camp, and they got out on that floating pier, and they looked like Huckleberry and Tom Flynn, and they were floating around on that thing and paddling. And Captain Mark Spagnola from Dust to Dawn Bowfish, and he brought up some of his gear, and we threw fish out there in the pond, and they were shooting at them with the bows. And we just had a ball. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
It is a blast. I love checking out the pictures and following you guys on Facebook.
It's great.
It's cool.
It's good stuff.
Someone said it earlier, not today, but I heard it. It's like Christmas in April, each one of the kids get a big pack, a big backpack full of everything you need. And then and you start from there,
I do have a follow-up question, though, about all of this. And I know it's all for the kids, Tracy. I get that. But is Greg giving you a hard time because he was the only one that was able to get a hunter to connect this
that
past
happened.
weekend?
I can't imagine he would do that.
Yeah. He kind of, yeah. I have to be honest. I was feeling a little jealous because his first boy connected, and I mean, Greg puts in a ton of time, and so do I. From about March 23rd until junior day, I listened to birds almost every single day, and I would leave my home, drive an hour and 10 minutes, listen to birds, and drive an hour and 10 minutes back home. So we put in our time to listen for birds. But, Greg, not only did he kill the first one, but then the boy that had the one at 50 yards was also on one of the farms that Greg had permission to hunt. And now then I said, Greg, what is the deal? I can't find a bird nowhere. And you got birds running over you. And he said, you just got to do your job scouting.
Oh.
If I didn't put in my time, what's the deal?
Well played, Mr. Krebs. Well played.
No, he hasn't rubbed it in too bad yet. I'm sure that, once things settle down here a little bit, he's had a phenomenal season, though. He's really been into the birds. It just goes to show what kind of guy he is. He's already called in, besides that boy, he's called in 3 other ones for other gentlemen, and 2 of the 3 have already harvested turkey. So he's actually called in now 4 birds, and 3 of them died.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, that's a really good year. It hasn't even got started yet.
Right.
We might need to talk to Turkey Greg.
Turkey Greg. Yeah, he doesn't get into the transitions and stuff like I do. He just goes and hunts. If he gobbles, he hunts them. If he don't, he goes home.
Yep. Yeah. So we're kind of bumping up on time, and I know this is going to be like it's another rabbit hole or turkey hole.
Oh, perfect.
But like, what makes good turkey habitat? You know, what are you looking for? Like deer, there's bedding, there's food sources, there's
hinge cutting,
suburbs.
Yeah. Well, it really depends on the terrain that you're at. What I personally like to find something that has a little bit of fields, because the fields is where they're getting all the protein. When the bugs start popping, the turkeys will go to the fields to eat the bugs because that's where all the protein is. But then you have to have a little bit of heavy cover too, because that's where the hens will go to nest. So I don't necessarily look for particular habitat when I'm scouting. Once I find the birds and see where they're roosting, then I kind of understand. I find that habitat around them. But I don't, with deer hunting, I go looking for bedding areas. I go looking for food sources. Turkeys, I don't do that. I look for some fields because I know they're going to be there. Like tomorrow, it's going to rain. So tomorrow I'll be on the edge of a field because I know that's where they go when it rains, so they can see. That's their key, is to be able to see and hear. So that they're going to go to fields. But I don't go looking just for habitat. I just listen for them to gobble, and then that habitat always ends up being around them.
Gotcha. And I have one more question that just popped up. When you're scouting and you're listening for birds and you're saying, I'm going to put some birds to bed, how close are you getting to the roost? Are you just, you have an idea based on how close they sound, or
if I go to an area I've never been to before, I don't get real close. They could be 100 yards, they could be 500 yards. If I go to an area where I know that they roost in that area, I'm generally this time of year, where as far as you can see through the trees still, I'm 250 to 300 yards from them. So I'm pretty, now later in the year, as it gets more green on where I can get closer, then I'll get within 150. But most of the time I'm 300 yards from from where I know they roost. I'm probably 250 to 300 yards. Because right now you can still see through the trees, 250, 300 yards on some ridges. So I don't get real close. And I know you said you're winding down on time, so let me give you a thought or just something to think about of how unique turkeys are, and how the thought process that went in when they were created, by God, is that when a hen goes to nest, there's so much you could talk about with turkeys, about how long they sit on the eggs before they hatch, and they don't sit on the nest until the last egg is, dropped. But anyway, here's just a thought for you. Is when a hen goes to sit on her eggs all the time, there's one feather in her body on each side of her that carries a scent gland, and that's how predators can smell her. Whenever she goes to set on her eggs full time, she pulls that particular feather out so that the predators can't smell her while she's sitting on the nest. The day that the last egg is hatched, those two feathers start to grow back.
Wow. Huh. I had no idea.
That's pretty interesting.
Just think about that for a minute. Huh? that'll make you stay up at night. Yeah. It just goes to show you how much. It just goes to show you how much detail God put into His creation when He created it.
Outdoors is a church.
Yeah, it's just pretty fascinating. And Mark Hoke is he shared that with me about, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. Mark Hoke's actually one that shared that with me. I never knew that. It might be a little bit longer than that now, but anyway, that was fascinating to me. And then once he told me, I didn't believe him, so I had to go research it. And it was true. It's a true fact.
Trust but verify. Somebody said that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Deke said that.
So we didn't get to talk a whole lot about, or didn't get to get too much into Heartwood Outdoors. But if people want to learn more about them, Tracy's a returning guest, so you go back to season 1 and check him out. I believe that episode's called "Cultivating the Heart of a Hunter."
Yeah, Heart of a
Sound
Hunter.
right? Yeah. So I'm going to learn a lot more about Tracy, a lot more about Heartwood Outdoors there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just you can go to our website too and read about it, check it out. There's a gentleman did what's it called? A gentleman did a story about us a couple of years ago. If you search that, you could find that it's pretty. Joe Equinox is his name. Did a pretty phenomenal story about Heartwood, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, you can check us out on the website or wherever.
What is your website address, Tracy?
It's heartwoodoutdoors.com. Just think of your heart, HEART, heartwoodoutdoors.com.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and on Facebook you can find him at Heartwood Outdoors.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for allowing me to come on and share and talk turkeys for a little while, and I hope you get into them on Saturday.
Well, thank you for the time, Tracy. I mean, the information that you just shared with us is mind-blowing, really.
I'm still processing all of that.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how you cannot listen to that and feel like you can't just go out and kill a bird.
Smack
something.
something.
It's just easy. I know in an hour.
Stevie's just going to wait for the day he can beat the log against a tree and get a bird to gobble and shoot him in the face.
Yeah,
that's transition 3.
I tell you what.
Transition 3.
Man,
when you find transition 3, call me. Hey, when them birds get in transition 3, call me. I'll be there.
I got my.
Until then,
log
Stevie's trout fishing.
Beaten stick, yeah.
I feel much more confident about going into Saturday after talking to Tracy.
Incredible.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you,
bud.
Tracy. Appreciate it, man.
You're welcome,
thanks,
guys.
Tracy.
All right.
All right, man. Good night.
Good night.
All right, see you.
Hey, Phil, where can you find us?
They can find us at RuttenRiverPursuits.com. They can find us at any social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, at Rutten River Pursuits, our Rutten River Pursuits podcast. Follow us individual, R2 David Kyle, Pass Through Archery. We also have, what's your Facebook? It's R2 Ryan.
Yep.
Stevie, R2 Stevie.
That's close enough.
Steve Miser.
Yeah.
Bad boy of podcasting.
Hashtag.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. This is really cool. Tracy is,
plethora.
He's the man, right?
I love these super technical shows where we really dive into the details.
My mind is still spinning on how much information is there.
It stings.
Awesome. Yeah, it does.
Well, I like the fact that we can put it into practice in just 2 days.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Good luck, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
Hey, shoot him in the face.
That dude's in the bedroom with 6 of his girlfriends, and he hears some girl in the kitchen going, hey, I'm over here. He's like, yeah, I'll get you later. But if he's in his living room or his bedroom, and he hears this little girl in the kitchen, he's like, I'll talk to her later. And then all of a sudden he hears some other dude go, don't worry about it, bud, I got her.
Uh-oh.
Now he's like, hold on a second.
That bird, if every time you call, he cuts you off, lay into him, let him come in and shoot him in the face. But Greg, what is the deal? I can't find a bird nowhere, and you got birds running over you. And he said, "You just got to do your job, Scout."
Oh.